Morning, the sky feels different. There's a strange clarity in the air, like the city took a cautious breath while you slept. You head out again, past the bakery with its closed until further notice sign, and down to the corner where the bulletin board hums with more slogans than truth. This time, something new catches your eye. Typed, not handwritten. A list of ration card updates. But beneath that, an announcement. Volksempfänger radios must now remain on at all times between 7 and 10 p.m. You don't need a historian to tell you what that means. The regime's grip is faltering. If people were still listening willingly, they wouldn't need to mandate it. As you pass an alley behind the bookshop, what's left of it, you see two kids playing with a busted bike frame. One wheel spinning freely, the other long gone. They're giggling, not because anything is funny, but because the sound of joy itself is rebellious now. You offer them a piece of hard candy from your coat. It's old and slightly sticky, but their eyes light up like you've given them diamonds. One of them salutes you. You wince. Your shift today is cancelled. No explanation. Someone shrugs and says rail problems. Someone else whispers about sabotage. You don't ask. You've learned that questions are the most expensive things you can carry. Instead, you take the day to visit your aunt in the outskirts. She's not really your aunt, just someone who used to feed you when your mother was sick. She lives in a cottage with boarded windows and a vegetable patch that's half frozen. She offers you a mug of watery broth and some crusty rye bread. You pretend it's delicious. Her radio is broken, which feels like a blessing. Over lunch, she tells you about a priest who was arrested for mentioning mercy too many times in his sermons. It's always the small words that get you, she says, buttering her bread with trembling fingers. The dangerous ones, like love, like truth. She's been hiding a boy in a cellar. You didn't ask. She didn't tell you, not exactly. But she lingers too long on the trapdoor when she fetches the carrots. You know. You make a silent promise not to know. On your way back, you pass a pile of burnt books. It's not new, but someone scribbled something in chalk beside the ashes. They try to burn thoughts. You stare at it longer than you should. A man with a bicycle slows beside you, sees it too. Says nothing, just rides on. Historians still argue whether passive resistance helped or merely prolonged suffering. You're not a scholar, but you know this much. The real resistance was never the loud stuff. It was moments like these, quiet, risky, and tender. The kind that didn't make headlines, but kept the last shreds of humanity stitched together with frayed thread. You swing by the train station again, out of habit. The platform's nearly empty. A train squeals in from the east, doors hissing. Only one passenger steps out, a woman with a face like crumpled paper and a suitcase covered in paint. Not graffiti, flowers. Someone tried to turn it into something beautiful. The suitcase, not the war. That's impossible. She sees you staring and smiles, just briefly. It's the kind of smile that says, I made it. You're still here. That's enough for now. In the evening, you go to the community center. Not for propaganda this time, but because someone whispered there might be a secret concert. The building's half dark, its stage dusty. No uniforms, just a boy with a violin and a woman with hands like wings who sits at a warped piano. They don't announce themselves, they just start playing. It's Bach. Or maybe Mozart. You're not sure. You're too busy trying not to cry. The notes drift through the hall like incense, curling into the ceiling's cracks, slipping past your rib cage. For 12 glorious minutes, the Reich vanishes. There is only sound and breath and the steady thrum of something no government can kill. Later, someone shares a joke, a real one. It's about Goering and a pig. It's not even that funny, but you laugh anyway. Because laughter, here, now, is a muscle worth keeping. You hope the Gestapo doesn't have informants tonight. Or if they do, that they've remembered how to laugh too. As you walk home, the wind picks up. You hear dogs barking in the distance and the distant thrum of planes overhead. You don't flinch. You don't pray. You just walk. Past broken statues, past empty stores, past places that used to mean something. You count your steps. You breathe. You exist. And somehow, that still feels like an act of defiance. Inside your flat, you light a candle, not because it's dark, but because you want to. You warm your feet by the stove, read 2 pages of an old novel you read 10 times already, and let your mind drift. You think of Gerda, of your not aunt, of the boy in the cellar. You think of the woman with the painted suitcase and the chalk message beside the ashes. And for a moment, just one, you imagine what this city might look like in 50 years. Will anyone know about your life? Will they remember how you hummed forbidden songs while peeling potatoes? Or how you shared sugar cubes in secret like they were holy relics? Probably not. But maybe, just maybe someone will say, there were people who stayed kind. You settle into bed, tuck the candle out, and let the quiet take over. Not peace exactly, but the pause before dawn. It'll have to do. You wake to the knock. Not a polite knock. Not the neighbor borrowing flour kind. It's that heavy, echoing kind, where each rap against the wood feels like it's trying to knock loose your spine. 3 sharp hits. Then silence. Your blood goes cold. You wait. You listen. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't your door. Maybe... Nope. There it is again. Slower this time. A kind of warning or invitation. You don't answer. Not right away. Instead, you slide your boots on without tying them and glance at the little window near the ceiling. You could slip out through the shared stairwell if you're quiet. But then you remember what happened to that man down the block last month. The one who ran. No one runs twice. So you open the door. It's just one man. Civilian coat, brown shoes, hat tucked under one arm. He doesn't introduce himself. He just nods and says, "You'll need to come answer a few questions." Not an arrest, not yet. You follow him down to a car that smells like paper and rust. The drive is silent. You don't ask where you're going. You just watch the buildings blur past and try to memorize details like you're leaving forever. Turns out it's not a prison. It's not even a proper office. It's a repurposed school building on the edge of the district. The windows are boarded up, but the desks are still there, lined up like little graves. Someone's erased the blackboard sloppily. Chalk dust lingers in the air. They sit you down, offer water, ask where you were last Tuesday evening. You tell the truth, or at least your version of it, the part that won't get anyone else in trouble. They nod, they write, they frown thoughtfully. Then, what do you know about the radio at 17 Brechtstrasse? You shake your head. Too fast, too obvious. They notice. One raises an eyebrow. Now, here's the strange part. They don't press. They just hand you a paper to sign. Some nonsense about confirming your awareness of public listening regulations and send you on your way. Historians still argue whether the regime's late-stage surveillance machine was precise or simply overwhelmed. Some say it became a theater of fear, interrogations designed more to remind you they were watching than to extract real information. You're inclined to believe that, especially when, just before you leave, one man says, "Tell your neighbor to fix that antenna." Wouldn't want the party to think they're ignoring the broadcasts. Your neighbor's dead. You buried her son last week. You walk back slowly, tracing a longer route home. The air is sharp with wood smoke and something acrid you can't place. On the corner, a boy no older than 10 is handing out tiny leaflets folded like fortune cookies. You take one. It says, "Your silence is their fuel." He looks at you as if daring you to do something with it. You eat it. Later that afternoon, there's a scuffle in the square. Not a fight exactly, more like a lopsided protest. A few women shouting about bread, about missing husbands, about ration cards that only ever get lighter. The police stand back at first, then they move in, not violently, just with that calculated pressure that makes you forget how to breathe. You don't shout with them. You don't run either. You just watch, hands in pockets, eyes lowered, learning. By dusk, the square's cleared. A poster goes up over the bricks. Unity is strength. Loyalty is life. You wonder if the glue's still wet. You resist the urge to spit. You duck into a tavern you haven't visited in months. It smells of cabbage stew and mildew. The radio's playing something orchestral, just loud enough to satisfy the rules. Everyone pretends to listen. No one's really listening. The bartender recognizes you. "You've lost weight," he says. "That's fashionable these days, right?" You laugh. You don't mean to. It just slips out, raw, startled. He pours you a tiny shot of schnapps and doesn't charge you. Just taps the rim twice and moves on. You find a seat near the corner, back to the wall. From here you can see the door, the radio, and the mirror behind the bar. Old habits. A man at the next table is talking softly to a woman in a green scarf. He mentions trains. Not the local kind. The other kind. His voice is tight, flat, like he's trying to file the edges off his words. You hear the name Theresienstadt, and your throat goes dry. You finish your drink, you leave. You never look back at them. On your way home, the streetlights flicker. Not a blackout, just the power grid reminding you that it's barely holding. You pass by a checkpoint that isn't staffed. That's new. You don't trust it. You walk a block out of your way. Your neighbor's door is ajar when you return. The one with the boy who loves birds. You knock gently. No answer. Inside, it's quiet. Too quiet. You step in. The boy is curled on the couch, fast asleep, a dead pigeon in his lap. His mother's coat is gone from the hook, her boots too. You tuck a blanket around him and shut the door softly. You don't need to ask what happened. You just hope she made it to the train. Or didn't. Depending on which one it was. You spend the evening fixing the latch on your window. Not because you're expecting someone, but because it's something your hands can do. Something that makes sense. You boil water. You check the candle stash. You reread that same dog-eared chapter. You try not to think about the radio, or the knock, or the way silence is louder than music lately. Then, just as you're about to turn in, you hear it. Someone on the rooftop. A soft thud. Then another. You don't panic. You wait. After a minute, the footsteps move on. Or vanish. You sit by the window a while longer. The moon is low. A dog howls somewhere far away. And you're still here. The morning creeps in like a pale ghost. Soft, cold, and reluctant. You wake to that brittle silence that only comes after a long, nervous night. The kind of silence that feels artificial. You half expect to see fresh boot prints in the frost on your windowsill. You don't. The city is still standing. Somehow. You dress in layers even though the sun is out. It's January or maybe February. Honestly, time started to blur into seasons and then into hunger. There's no bread today. The bakery window has been empty for weeks. But they still open it every morning as if hope is part of the ritual. You see an old man on the corner selling buttons. Just buttons. You can't tell if it's a joke or a kind of slow collapse. Either way, no one's laughing. You give him one cigarette. He hands you a shiny brass button like it means something. Maybe it does. Today you've been asked to report for community inspection duty. That's a fancy way of saying, walk around and pretend to be vigilant. Technically, you're helping the war effort. Realistically, you're one more body in a system built on pretending not to notice the smoke rising from the edges of the map. You patrol for hours through streets so familiar you could navigate them blindfolded. And in some ways you do. You ignore the stares from shuttered windows, the twitchy curtains, the whispered German that stops when you come close. You're not proud of this uniform, but it's a second skin now. Too late to peel it off. You meet a man named Weber halfway through your shift. He's older, with a limp and a bad cough. He says he used to be a teacher. Says the children were the hardest part to let go. He doesn't say what happened to them. You don't ask. Instead, You both share a cigarette and watch a group of Hitler Youth march past. Their boots are too clean, their eyes too bright. It's like watching children play with matches in a house soaked in gasoline. Weber mutters, "They're already older than we ever got to be." It's hard to argue with that. Historians still debate the level of ideological conviction among ordinary citizens by this point in the war. Were most of them believers, survivors, hypnotized, or just too tired to resist? In truth, you suspect most people were some blend of all four, depending on the day and what they had for breakfast, if anything. At lunchtime, you cut down through the market square. A woman is bartering wool socks for soap. A man is quietly selling tiny drawings of Berlin before the war, postcard-sized glimpses of a vanished world. One shows the zoo, another the old opera house. You buy one with your last 2 pfennigs and tuck it into your coat. Later at home, you'll stare at it for a long time. You'll imagine standing in that square with clean shoes and full lungs and no sense of doom pressing against your ribs like a second heartbeat. You'll imagine lions roaring and people laughing, and you'll almost believe it was real. You spend the rest of the day gathering fuel, bits of broken chairs, splinters from fences, anything that will burn without drawing attention. There's a saying now, firewood is currency. You could almost start a bank with what you find. That evening, you try the radio again. Static. Then a voice. Then silence. It keeps doing that. Like someone's fighting to break through. Like the truth is stuck behind a locked door and someone's jiggling the handle. You hear the word Stalingrad. You hear retreat. You don't hear celebration. At supper, if you can call it that, you boil cabbage and pretend it's stew. You read an old letter out loud, even though the ink is fading. It's from your cousin in Munich, dated 1941. It talks about books and gardens and how people believed the war would be over by Christmas. You fold it carefully and put it back in its envelope, even though you've memorized every word. There's a knock at the door. This time, just a neighbor, asking if you've seen her cat. You haven't, but you give her a bit of the boiled cabbage anyway. Not because you can spare it, because she's crying, and it's the only thing you have to offer. That night, as you lie in bed, you think about endings. Not just war endings, but all of them. You wonder what you'll say to your children if they ever ask about this time. You wonder if you'll even want to speak at all. And you promise yourself something quietly, silently, that you'll remember. That if this all crumbles, you won't erase it. That you'll carry it like a stone in your pocket. Small, heavy, undeniable. Because survival isn't just about breathing. It's about bearing witness. And now, as the last flickers of candlelight vanish behind shuttered windows, the streets of wartime Germany grow quiet, distant, like a fading memory. The curfews, the checkpoints, the whispered names, those shadows can't follow you here. Your breathing slows, your jaw unclenches. The past drifts further and further away, like a train slipping into fog, its whistle long gone. You're not rationing food. You're not scanning skies for bombers. You're not choosing between silence and survival. Not anymore. Instead, you're safe, tucked beneath warm blankets in a room untouched by searchlights or slogans. Just you, your breath, and the hush of a world at rest. Let the cold cobblestones and grey corridors fall away. Let the soot and secrets dissolve. They belong to another time. One that tried to swallow hope but couldn't quite erase it. You carry none of their guilt, none of their burdens, only the quiet strength that comes from understanding what others endured. So rest now. Let your thoughts blur at the edges. Let the stories become soft shapes in the distance. Important, but no longer urgent. The war is over. The night is gentle. And you are allowed to sleep.